They did any makeup today anyway, so. Okay. So, welcome. Thank you so much for all of you coming. I really appreciate this. Want to take this opportunity to introduce our new enrollment services to you. If you've been in the Student Services Center here on the Kentfield campus and hadn't been there for a while, you'd notice a big change. I personally think it's beautiful, although I think it will get more beautiful when we get more boxes unpacked. So I just want to kind of take you through the steps how we decided to do this reorganization. We're not the first in the state to do it, but we're definitely one of the first. I was happy to let a couple other colleges do it first and kind of pick their brains and find out what worked and what didn't work. I believe Long Beach City College was the first one who really did it in a big way and very successfully so far. So it's an emerging best practice, and I'm going to explain to you the reasons why we think it's going to really benefit college and Ryan students.
There we go.
So, who we were. We were admissions and records, one department, financial aid, another department, and then we had a scholarship program through the advancement department. Shall I shut the door? Okay. So our scholarship department, or our scholarships for our students were handled through the advancement office, also the public information officer, And there's been some personnel changes in there and some structure changes, and the foundation doesn't really exist in the way that it did before. And so scholarships were sort of left in. There were some internal scholarships that were handled through financial aid, but very minimally. So that's who we were, and sadly, some people have referred to admissions and records and or financial aid as the DMV, and some of those are my own staff. So let me see if this works now. I have this little video clip. I don't know if it's going to work. Don't you love being the first audience? Oh, here we go. Oh, and there's no sound. Well, this would be really good if there was sound, huh?
It's not on.
Oh, I'm watching it online. Now you know what's going to happen. When I go back to my PowerPoint, it's not going to work either. I mean, steel grate window right there. You can see a student standing there, and then they have chairs all the way lined up along that hallway. So very not ADA accessible for anybody trying to come down there. In fact, quite a hazard because there's usually kids running around and very tight space, and plus they have things all stacked out there and everything. So what we found in admissions and records, and this happens in other districts, is that students would go to admissions and records and they do something with their registration, and then they would have a question about their financial aid. So we'd say, well, you need to go somewhere else for that, and send them down the little hallway, and then they get to, or vice versa, they'd be at financial aid and they'll say, well, that's an admissions and records question, you have to go down there. Now I can tell you, at peak times, those lines are ugly. If you've ever been there, it's people stacked up, it's kids, it's backpacks, it's nuts.
Lack of privacy as well.
What?
In the case of financial aid, that's a private personal matter, and you were having to talk over a counter with people hanging out.
Exactly, as you're kind of sticking your head in this steel window, exactly. So we started thinking, wouldn't it be great for the student if they could just come to one place and whoever they talked to was trained to help them with all of those things. But because really financial aid and enrollment are completely related. A student needs to know what their financial situation is when they're going to be going to college and how they're going to pay for it. And then it came to my attention, because it took me a while after I got here to realize that nobody was handling scholarship. And so I thought, well, you know, in my last district, we had financial aid and scholarship together. And in university models, when a student is applying to college, they handle it as a package deal. I happen to have just gone through this with my youngest son, and when he was applying to colleges, they would give all the information back at once. You've been accepted to the college, here's what we still need. a transcript or something like that. And you did fill out the FAFSA, and we also received, whatever. And here's the whole package that we're gonna award you. So they knew if they were accepted, what their program was, what their major was. They had already done their advisement. They knew how much they could count on in financial aid, Pell Grants, and what scholarships they qualified for, because they did it all in one process. So the student could make a decision about how they were gonna handle school as a whole picture, rather than, oh yeah, you're admitted, y'all come, and then you go somewhere else, they're like, well, did you see a counselor? Oh, well, did you do assessment testing? And oh, by the way, how are you gonna pay for it? Some students don't even know that they qualify for financial aid. I have to say, I went through a good deal of college without realizing I qualified for financial aid, and I kinda think, gosh, that would have made life a little bit easier, and maybe it wouldn't have taken me so long if I had known I had it available to me. So we started thinking, with the whole Student Success Act, why don't we as a college put those things together and make it easier on the student? Let them just be a student here. Take care of them, nurture them at the beginning, set them off on the right path. And the best way to do that is for whoever they encounter at the college to know everything about that student when they're talking with them, advising them, helping them. For instance, a student comes in and says, okay, I need to drop this class, is it by the, is it too late, is it at the deadline? And it used to be, one of our staff would say, oh no, the deadline's Friday, you can drop, and let the student drop all their classes. Now, wouldn't it be better if we also were looking at a screen when we helped that student and saw that they had financial aid, and that if they dropped below the minimum number of units, they would lose their financial aid. Maybe they would have to return funds to the college, or they would lose their ability to defer their student loan, all sorts of ramifications. Also, maybe they wouldn't be able to, if they had a year's scholarship that bridged 2 years, they wouldn't be eligible for the rest. So lots of things, and we started to think, well, that's the way it should be, because who wants, that's the DMV model, right? You go to this window, oh, well, you need, your car registered in addition to, something else, a towing license or something. Go to another window, okay, go sit and wait in another line, and I don't know, those people didn't seem happy. And I'm thinking they didn't seem happy because the people who came to see them weren't happy. Kind of revolves around that way. So John and I started talking about it and thinking, well, how does this play into the student success and supported, I can never say this, student success and support program. There's so many S's. And how could we weave this into our commitment and responsibility to the students? We want to put them on the path to success, but it's not just a matter of telling them, okay, go get your assessment testing, go to an orientation, see a counselor, sign up for your classes, and make sure you pay for it, and have fun. We'll see you at graduation. That we really need to take responsibility from the get-go with that student. And there's so many other things that are being implemented at the college now, the early alert and intervention piece. So where we're really starting to see at the very first red flag where a student might be stumbling and how we can help. Interestingly, I just came from my office where I'm reviewing a huge number of financial aid appeals. So these are students who have been able to go along and they haven't been making satisfactory academic progress. So they're either, their GPA is falling and falling below a 2.0, or they're not successfully completing at least 66% of their units. If either of those factors exist for a student, they are disqualified for financial aid, and then they appeal. Well, as you can imagine, by the time a student gets to that point, it's a little hard to pull them back and get them back on track. Unfortunately, some of them who've been depending on financial aid and Pell Grants and scholarships and that sort of thing just for daily life, to them it almost becomes a way of life, and they can't kind of see their way out of it. I know this sounds terrible to say, but I went to school with students, even in my graduates program, that said, oh, this is my solution to financial aid. I'm just going to keep going to school so I don't have to pay my loans. And it's a very common, and sometimes it makes sense because you're on your way to something great, and hopefully you'll be able to pay those loans. But for some students, it's really a matter of survival, and you see that more at a community college level, especially with a more underserved population. So then I started to get really involved in financial aid just this spring when we started this reorganization going forward, and I started delving into the financial aid piece to see where we were with things, and I was alarmed to find out that those practices that we've had, which continued to let students stay on financial aid, even though they were disqualified, they would appeal and get granted and go on and on, has put our, wow, just ripped my earring out. Cut that. Not only are we putting those students at risk, because what is the likelihood those students are going to accumulate that amount of debt and then, you know, after a number of years and changing majors and then be able to get a job that's going to help them repay those loans. You know, I feel like I have a very good job and I'm still paying my student loans. So, you know, you really start to want to think compassionately about those students and are they aware, or do they understand what they're committing themselves to when they're getting these loans? That, you know, eventually the day will come where you have to pay them, and I can tell you, they will never be forgotten. You could declare bankruptcy, you could have all the things in the world happen, and the one thing they won't let you shake loose are your student loans. And so that's a terrible thing for the students, but it's not great for our school, because when I went to this big conference down in Southern California, it was brought to my attention, and by the way, this is new for me because I've always been an admissions and records person, that there's a new law that is going into effect, in fact, this fall, called the 150% loan law. And if a student accumulates debt that's more than 150% of the term of what it should take to complete that program. So for instance, a one-year dental assisting program, they will only allow aid for 3 semesters, so 2 semesters, so you can extrapolate that out for any program. And after that, if the student doesn't get the loan, but if we let them keep continuing to get the loans, it goes against our school loan default rate. And just to give you an example of where we're at and where we're headed, 4 years ago, we were at about a 13% default rate. The next year we were at 17%. The next year we went up to 24%, and we're headed for 27% in this next coming year. When a school gets to a 30% default rate, they're put on watch status, and if they stay at 30% for 3 years, then we lose the ability to provide federal financial aid to our students. So and there are a number of schools that are in that situation. If you hit over 40, you lose it immediately. So we hired a consulting firm to analyze our data, project forward, and we are now working with this firm to notify our students and start doing some financial literacy very after the fact. That's not our plan for the future, but to try to get our students back on track and pull that in so that we can continue to be a provider. But again, it really illuminated where every person who touches that student has contact with that student at our school. The best way we can serve that student to see that whole picture is to see, you know, how are your grades? Are you sticking to your educational plan, which is a requirement for financial aid? And, you know, if you drop your classes, or, you know, if you have priority registration but you haven't registered yet, you know, you need to get those classes, stay with your ed plan. So it just kept gelling more and more how much sense it made to merge these 2 offices together. And it didn't hurt that we had some staff shortages, and we started thinking about, you know, how we could support each other better as well. So this is the slowest computer. So where are we now? The merge is official, although physically financial aid hasn't moved into our space yet. They're having a pretty crazy time right now, so we've delayed it for about 2 weeks to let them get through some challenges, and then we'll move in. And probably anytime after next week, I'd invite you to come in and take a tour of our new space, which is gorgeous, but we're still unpacking boxes. So here's where we are now. Remember the old walls?
You still have room to put that fireplace back.
Actually, we don't. See where these,
No, I was
where those computer kiosks are. It's actually really nice. Where these kiosks here are, where the students are, there's a bank of 10, and we have 2 ADA accessible ones right there. And then back on this wall that's going back towards counseling has a really nice soft seating area. So different couches that can be moved around in different configurations, and little tables that come up over and can work like a desk, and really encourages students to kind of hang out, group together, but it also pulls it away from the crowd that's gathering here. Moving this forward also gave us the ability for all of the staff working here in that glassed-in area to see the students notice when, there was a problem, need help, or just to come out and help them, that they weren't coming all the way over to the other wall. And then there's room for that queue in front. But you can see all of that's glassed in now. I don't know if you can tell from this picture, but now when you walk in the front door, you can see straight through the glass in that wall, which used to be a solid wall, through the exterior wall, and all you see is just beautiful trees. It's gorgeous. I mean, that is one of the most beautiful things about that building. It's an old 70s building, but there's some really beautiful architecture to it. So it's just a light, clean, open space that now houses 4 customer service or student service windows. So now we are called Enrollment Services Associates. One name, one office, and one stop. So just as a quick, I don't know if you all got one, you can take one on the way out or take some. In fact, if you have them and want to put them in your classrooms or your office or whatever, this is just a little card that now says what's all together and where to find us. So in admissions, that covers application for credit, non-credit, Spanish online version of the application, AB 540, DREAM Act, residency, veteran certification. Financial aid is brought into it, the FAFSA, the BOG fee waiver, Cal Grants, MyCom refunds. We're now doing the US Bank card, which is how students they'll receive their money electronically on a debit card instead of waiting for a check to come in the mail that then they have to go cash. Pell Grants and student loans. Records has graduation, petitions, transcripts, evaluations, verifications. Registration includes enrollment priority, registration for credit and non-credit classes, high school concurrent enrollment, prerequisite equivalencies, challenges and petitions, and then scholarship will be handling both internal and external opportunities that are available to all students.
So will your office be monitoring, daughter of an Italian immigrant from the 20s scholarship, these esoteric things online? So,
all of them, yes.
Great.
Right now, I'm doing it manually, but this time next year it will all be online, so that when a student fills out a generic scholarship application, it will sort their data and place them in a rubric for whatever scholarships they qualify for, according to what the parameters are from the donor. So as part of this, another thing that we did, and this was also a recommendation that I had, and I found out it was a pretty popular one, with Greg Nelson, our new VP of Fiscal, which was to pull the cashier and accounting functions out of admissions and records. It's a university model again, but it's really a good financial accounting method to take the collection of money and have separation of duties, so that the collection of money is separate from the place that you charge for something. Very standard in, like I say, larger institutions. My former district used to have it the way it is here, and then we slowly moved to the other one, and it's just cleaner. There's something, I don't know how to say it any better, except to say it's a little icky when you're encouraging a student to enroll and then also collecting the money. It's not standard accounting. So the new office, which will be in the old financial aid space, and they're gonna knock out their walls, pretty like ours, and have all glassed in, but they'll have safety glass. And they will be handling all money-related responsibilities and transactions. So parking permits, paying of fees, disbursement of financial aid money, all money-related items for the entire college. So even some of the departments that are currently handling money now, that will all change and everything will go to that office. That's expected to open, we're hoping around October. We were planning for earlier, but then Greg Nelson's been out for a while, so it's kind of stalled a little bit, but we have done the hiring for it.
With the funds that say somebody gives the art department $100,000 in some vague parameters on how to use it, will that money be distributed there?
Yes.
So none of the former function of the foundation will be.
Correct.
No financial counseling or planning will go on. This is strictly give and take money.
It's just student accounts, right? And, instructional money, yeah. As far as, payroll and all that kind of stuff, that'll still stay at IDC.
Right, so the one stop downstairs can talk to people about their taxes and how to save money and how to be a more responsible person. where will the financial literacy issue,
That will be with us in enrollment services.
and
So-
that'll be about, don't get so much debt, you know,
Yes.
that there's an outcome to this.
Right, and I'll get to that when I tell you about the new structure and the new positions and what we're gonna bring with that. So the benefits to students are that all members of the enrollment services staff will be able to view each student as a whole. We'll be better able to serve and advise the student from the very start, so from the time of application to the college. And it's a best practice service delivery, one stop, one window, no line bouncing. Most students are pretty thrilled about that. Benefits to the staff. We really thought about that because it was kind of a scary concept for them to think about having to learn new things, or maybe losing their identity as a financial aid or admissions and records person. So we've been working on that a lot for about 4 or 5 months now. And we're definitely getting there. It's hard because it never slows down long enough for you to really just focus on that. But I'm really impressed with the entire staff, how they've come through it. So the benefits are they get trained on all aspects of enrollment-related tasks. Because, I don't know, for myself, if someone comes to me and asks me a question, I've got the answer to that, and then they have 3 more questions that I don't have the answer to, I'm probably just as frustrated as the student, if not more so. And nobody wants to be like, oh, go to that window, you know, because who knows if that window's going to be able to do it. It's good professional development. The more you learn in your job, the more stimulated you stay, the more connected you are with the rest of the college. You're not just sitting there at your desk doing, you know, one series of things over and over again. We're really promoting the professional development of staff to help them understand the big picture for the students so that they can really be good ambassadors and guides.
Has there been additional compensation arranged?
Yeah, of course. They all have brand new job descriptions, so nobody is A&R or financial aid anymore. We have enrollment services associates, and they're level 1, level 2, and level 3, which explains the distinct career ladder. So it gives everyone an opportunity to be at a certain level and be doing some of the functions for certain areas of responsibility as a level 1, and then as a level 2, it's still all the same areas, but they're building on it. You know, we'd send them for additional training and skill building on that. So anyone who's a 1 is already starting to learn it at the most basic level, how to do that job, because they're supporting the 2s and the 3s in it. Any 2 or 3 retires or leaves for whatever reason, that person is in line and already on their way to being ready. In fact, I was able to promote, I think, 1 or 2 people that way within this process.
So with Debbie Weaver, who does the evaluation and the graduation stuff, is she outside of?
She is, yeah, and I'll show you the whole staff in just a minute. And they did, it enhances their comprehension of the student experience. They're not just thinking about, okay, you're registered for 3 classes, you know, okay, go to your class now. You know, it's more like, oh, you know, you're in math and it looks like you're repeating it for the 3rd time. Have you sought tutoring? Let me show you where you can do that. That will probably help you a lot. Or, you know, it looks like you might want to check in with your counselor about your ed plan, that kind of thing. We're not advising, we're not counseling, we're just guiding the student. I think one of the best parts, one of the parts that I really feel like College of Marin will benefit from is it allows for creation of an enrollment outreach team that offers a comprehensive enrollment package to comm students and also potential students all in one experience. So a lot of the outreach that Anna Pillaton does such a great job right now is based more on assessment, you know, programs, what's available, but the financial aid and scholarship piece has been missing. Our current financial aid staff don't do any workshops, they don't do any outreach, our former financial aid staff. They've been too short-staffed and they just haven't developed professionally to the point where they're reaching out into the community and being part of that team to offer what's available to students. And I think that's really very important, especially at the high school level and even sooner, to start to let students know that they can't afford to go to college, that it's achievable and it's doable. So that will be mainly the role of the new assistant dean, which I'll talk about in just a minute, working with Anna and the others on the outreach team, transfer, et cetera, to start to put that all in one piece together. The benefits to the college, best of all, it puts us in compliance with the Student Success and Support Program. our funding develops, our funding depends on that. We need to be in compliance, but you've probably heard John say this before if you've heard him in any meetings. His vision is not just to be in compliance, but it's to actually produce improved outcomes, measurable improved outcomes for our students. And so this is all part of that. So we'll be able to build on the mandates and funding guidelines, and we believe that this now will give us a true success model that will be reflected in our students and in their eventual outcomes, so from the very get-go. So how are we looking now? That's us now, that's the new seating area. And I think that's Matt Smith trying to cover up a cord. So this is our team. Look all of them there. Can you read all those? So the Dean of Enrollment Services, the Assistant Dean, this is a new title that just got put through, is called the Assistant Dean of Enrollment Services / Student Financial Assistance. So it's basically replacing the Financial Aid Director, but taking it up a notch to an Associate Dean level where the two of us will work together as partners to put those, put that vision out there, to take it beyond just doing the tasks and the chores, but to be developmental and take it out not only to the college community, but to the greater community. Then we have Enrollment Services Associates 3, that's the highest level, and the best way I can describe them is they're pretty much coordinators. They're really our right hand, you know. Sandra, for instance, is my right-hand person, and Andrea Hunter will be the right-hand person to the Assistant Dean. So really, someone who sees the whole picture, has the ability to plan ahead, do a yearly calendar, you know, predict what's going to be needed, and not be reactive. Enrollment Services Associates 2, Emmy, Cecil, Patience, Sienna, and Joan Paulino. And they work at a higher level from a 1 in that they take on a responsibility for a certain area. It might be student petitions, it might be veteran certification, international students, Debbie does prerequisite equivalencies, but certain areas that require more training, they would be sent to conferences, workshops, that kind of thing. But also they take the responsibility for doing their own research, whether it be online or with their peers, really understanding, have a deeper level of understanding about the program that they're working on. And then they're supported in all of those areas by the Enrollment Services Associates 1, the Associate 1s. So everybody understands the same areas, it's just their level of responsibility, knowledge, and output changes with the levels as you go up. The nice thing about it, though, is we saw it already happen. Joan Paulino used to be an enrollment, well, what would have been the equivalent of a 1. And for all of our staff were asked to submit a resume and apply for the position, the level that they wanted, that they felt that they could perform at, and then they were interviewed by an interview committee. And it was really, it was a process that I have to say not a lot of them were excited about. But in the long run, they all came out of it with a beautiful resume. It really kind of, that which is a professional development tool, you know, really emphasized to them, which I think is a really positive thing, how much they do. You know, sometimes you know, somebody will say, well, what do you do in your job? And, well, I don't know, I just go in and do it. But when you're really put in a position of needing to define how much you know, what you do, what you're responsible for, it was really, I think, a ego building thing for them. You know, it really was like, well, I really do know a lot, and I want to know more. And Joan is one of those success stories. She has been, told me later, had been wanting for about 6 months to be in a higher level. She wanted more responsibility. She wanted to be more challenged at her job. She didn't want to just be answering emails and doing that. And so she, many of them, really took it to heart and treated it just like it was an open interview, and she did really great. And boy, she just rose to the occasion, and I think it's kind of inspiring for all of her peers to see that too, like, oh, it can happen. You know, it's not just, how long have I been here? Okay, I should be promoted now. So I think everybody's, you know, I'm sure there's probably some people who didn't get to move up who wanted to, but I think they're now able to see how those people are performing at a different level and what it takes and what the possibilities might be for them. And then we left their job descriptions alone. Gina Longo, she's the administrative assistant to, it says to the Dean of Enrollment Services, she'll actually be to both of us, the associate dean and the dean.
It says
And-
deans, both.
Dean, I can't even read my, yeah, that's right. And then Debbie Weavers will remain an academic evaluator. Debbie's, we're gonna reassess her position and add some things to it and probably take some things out with the restructure, but we decided to leave that out of this reorganization and treat that on its own. And of course, Gina's will, the administrative assistant will increase as well, obviously reporting to two deans, the levels and expectations. And yes, in answer to your question, all of these went through negotiations, labor management, and new salaries were negotiated. And I'm happy to say everybody, even if they stayed at sort of the same level, but with a new title, got at least, I think, a 15 to 18% increase. So, you know, we're asking them to do a lot more. We're asking them to learn more, to integrate more, to have a higher level of critical and analytical thinking, but we're compensating them for it. You know, we're inspiring them to want to be involved in that.
No one walked, did they?
Well, not walked.
Don't get named.
They might have wanted to, I don't know. We did Kelly Gaffney, who is, would have been the equivalent of a 1 at IVC. She actually applied for a position in the bursar's office. And so she's going over there, but we think it's a great transition because she takes all the admissions and records knowledge and all of that with her, and we still have that relationship, you know, because of her, you know, her relationships and connections with everybody.
Diane, how long did the entire process take to, I'm just curious for this entire process.
Would you like to count my gray hair? From about 6 months, yeah. And I wouldn't even venture to tell you it was easy, but it was so worth it. It really is.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So obviously my interest is mostly at IBC. So Cecil, who's been in the back room doing confidential financial aid, packaging, is now going to be someplace else in a public space and.
You know, that's a good question. IBC's has.
And we can talk about this off.
Yeah,
but-
no, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. We haven't quite worked that out all the way. Cecil and I are kind of talking and trying to sort of envision what's the best for the student.
Yeah.
And also for her, and definitely we want to preserve the confidentiality. By the way, in the Kentfield space, this horrible room that we used to have, it was called the safe room, and I just thought it was like a terror chamber. During the remodel, we cleaned it out. Turns out it has a window, and it's a beautiful space, and that's the new assistant dean's office. So there will be a private office for confidential here at Kentfield, which they didn't really even have here. David Cook a little bit. But we talked about how, you know, in some ways I think College of Marin wants to make sure that, or strives for Kentfield and IBC to be the same. But the reality of it is they're different. And that's not a bad thing. IBC has a lot of wonderful qualities simply because of where it is, the programs it has, the people that work there, and maybe Cecil and I even talked about this, maybe we shouldn't work so hard on trying to make them just like Kentfield.
Right. In a meeting yesterday, I referred to the two campuses have nothing in common except they're on the same planet. But equal but different, it's ridiculous.
It's
I think
true.
we learned through the accreditation process that having people sit up there doing nothing because the population doesn't warrant it
It's
is
not, yeah.
irresponsible.
And I've experienced this before in my past district. We had a larger campus and a smaller campus, and I gotta tell you, it's exactly the same dynamic. It doesn't matter, you know, proportionately, it was exactly the same. And same qualities too. What was good about it was also what was difficult about it, and the feelings were the same. So Cecil and I are right now just trying to work on what's the best service model for students, but also because she's the only two there, I want her to have more of a presence with the other Enrollment Services Associate 1, and plus there's a huge office space there. So we'll probably preserve her office for the confidential student meetings and so forth, and we're just kind of, she and I agreed, you know, we both want the same thing. We want the best thing for the student, and we want her to have her space to do that, but also to bring her into the fold so that the students are getting the same benefits at the IBC campus. new tagline that our public relations office came up with. Enrollment services, streamlining services to get you on your path to success. Questions? Do you have any questions?
A lot of good work, a lot of good work.
Thank
It actually seems amazing you got it done in 6 months. I mean, if you had to negotiate things and as much, I'm sure there was probably a lot of angst in the midst of that, but I
Yeah.
think you did an amazing job.
I
Thank
think
you.
the angst
Thank
is
you.
a good term.
No, it was uncertainty, it's on the
Well, definitely
unknown.
angst. People didn't know if they were going to lose their job, their
Yeah.
salary, their identity. And I think they wanted to make sure that they were treated fair, but in a really, I think, a positive thing that I noticed was they really wanted to protect each other. And I think that was a good team building thing for them. Not always so great for me, because sometimes it was the whole team that was mad at me. But I think in the long run, they chose to believe in my vision and that I wasn't going to let them down, and I didn't. I think I got them all, you know, I think a better title, a higher salary, a more challenging job. Everybody has a job. They may think that their desk space is a little cramped because we have all new furniture and it's a different design, and I'm really trying to bring us to 100% paperless, and they're very reticent to let go of their paper. And I keep telling them, I'm not going to buy more furniture to store more paper. We're going to go paperless. We're not going to invest money in storing more paper. And we've already done a lot. We did all of the petitions are now online. Prerequisite equivalencies and challenges will be online next. We'll be doing the financial aid petitions online. And also, I just hired a firm. Oh, that's my boss calling. Does he know I'm doing this? We hired a firm to completely automate financial aid. So I've had a couple consultants come in to evaluate financial aid and also do some catch-up work. But both of them were like, you have to automate. This is, you can't even deal with this. And so the last consultant put us in touch with someone who I think is in Chicago, former Banner employees. So they're Banner experts, but they don't work for Banner anymore. So they will, at a lower rate, tell you how to make Banner work for you. So we just hired them. They just started yesterday. We have a 3-week contract. They're going to automate loan applications, viewing, and awards. So there's a certain percentage, which are basically slam dunks. You know, they submit online, everything's cool, great, done. You're reviewed, you're awarded, you're packaged. And like some of the other things we're talking about automating, that leaves the rest of the staff time to be really hands-on with the ones that need more one-on-one attention. You know, financial aid applications that need documentation, or students who aren't familiar with how to navigate online. So our staff has more time to do that because we're not plowing through paper.
Are you at all concerned about people who are not users of technology?
I think there will always be people who are not users, and so it'll never be eliminated completely, because I don't think you can do that. You can't eliminate anything that was a constant for, 100 years.
Yeah. It seems like everybody is completely literate, but if you work in that world, you don't know the ones who aren't.
That's true.
They're not participants.
That's true. I have faith in the upcoming generation, just because I have kids that have come up through it, that, I think we're headed to a place where, the percentage of people who don't use it will be less, but there will always be those. And so, again, that leaves us with, if we're dealing less with paper and more people are using the things online, it gives our staff time to assist and help educate the ones who aren't there yet, to be developmental with them. So if 95% of your work is done online now, and you used to have people standing in line and processing paper and filing it and refiling it and everything, all that's done online. Now the staff can focus on really paying attention to the students who need it. Going out into the lobby and working one-on-one with them, helping them feel comfortable with it. We talked about setting up computer labs where student ambassadors staff it, who can be there. When I converted SRJC to paperless, I went to a number of colleges who had done it. One of them was San Joaquin Delta, and not that they do everything right, but they did do this right, and they took us through their whole process, how they took their campus paperless. And they had a 24-hour computer lab that was staffed 24/7, because they had a significant population that weren't computer literate, and really pulled them up, and they were successful. I think I saw them after about 3 years into it. So, I knew it could be done, and I knew the struggles that you'd have. And I think that's why, I wouldn't say it was easy for me to do this, but I knew if you just persisted and believed in it, and I really do believe in it, otherwise I don't think I could have gotten through the 6 months of it,
Mhm.
but
A suggestion, or maybe you mentioned the sort of esprit de corps sense of value that your staff has taking on more responsibility. So instead of being stuck in the back room and feeling unappreciated and almost abused, somebody comes.
wait a minute, I'm.
No, I mean,
Yeah, no, I.
there was a sort of wounded quality to
I agree.
the staff. And
I think their level of pride has really.
yeah, and my only thought is celebrate that.
Yeah.
More softball games or whatever
Yeah.
it takes,
Definitely.
or you know.
Actually, I instituted a couple awards when I started a year ago. One was called the, well, because we're so petition heavy, and then we were very proud of the fact that we went paperless with petitions. In fact, we took the team, and some of them were just people who had just been staff before, and we presented at a statewide convention our paperless online petitions and had all kinds of attention, and people want to buy the software. But so we thought of this award called the Petition to be Awesome Award. So it's a petition to be awesome, and we stamp it approved. It's a big gold thing, and we once a month pass it around to people on the campus who we appreciate. But we also have an internal appreciation award, and I really wanted the staff to start to appreciate each other. And if you give them the opportunity or kind of put it in their face, it makes them think on a regular basis, daily, weekly, monthly, about who they really appreciate, who makes their job easier. And you know, when I started to do it, I seriously, I felt like a kindergarten teacher. I brought in this wood plaque, and we had stickers and paint. But you know, then that kind of loosened them up, and we started laughing and joking and stuff. So they made this really corny award, which is very colorful.
They were
but-
very proud of it. I was at a couple meetings when it got passed around.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know.
So, you know, the first, I think I presented the first one. Well, from there on out, there were tears at every one. I mean, there was acceptance speeches, there was hugging, it bred warmth. So now we've brought the financial aid people in, and we're wanting to include them. Again, we're not quite there yet, but we started about 4 months ago when we knew this was gonna go through, having meetings. And, you know, we had the tough meeting in the beginning. Okay, what does everybody hate about this? What is everybody afraid of? You know, it's like group therapy. And we've moved along, and I think they're all feeling a little, we only have one man, but a little more sisterly and brotherly to each other, and a little protective of each other. And I think that will really come to full fruition once we're in the same place. So.
Good.
No other questions? If you get a chance, go take a look, but wait until after the board meeting, because that's our drop dead date, because the board's gonna come and look at it, and that's like when all the paint is gonna be patched and perfect, so.